The Nigerian government under President Bola Tinubu recently submitted a request to the National Assembly for approval to secure foreign loans amounting to roughly 45 trillion naira, which is over $24 billion as part of the 2025 budget. Now, this proposal included in the 2024 to 2026 external borrowing plan has sparked intense debate with opposition leaders, economists, and advocacy groups raising alarms over the country's growing debt and the unclear use of past borrowed funds. Officials argue that these funds are vital for key areas such as infrastructure, healthcare, education, agriculture, water supply, security, and financial reforms. The administration claims these investments are necessary to tackle Nigeria's infrastructure gaps and compensate for dwindling local funding.
The proposed borrowing represents about 60% of the 2025 budget and is intended to create jobs, boost skills development, encourage entrepreneurship, alleviate poverty, and improve food security. However, the plan has faced significant backlash. If you recall, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has labeled the move irresponsible and perilous, cautioning that it jeopardizes Nigeria's economic future, also stating that this current administration is in the line of borrowing and borrowing and borrowing all over again. But then again, joining us to further break down the impact of this rising debt profile is economist Gbolahan Olojede. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Before we get into the conversation proper, we had Tokpe Faswa here on the show, and when we asked him about the impact of this borrowing and where our debt profile stands, he had a response. So let's take a look at this video, and then we'll have you react to it.
The thing is that it's a 3-year plan, and the plan is just to say that's the limit, you know. So basically say that you cannot borrow anything that is not inside that plan in terms of the different categories, whether it was federal, state, local government. You can't do more than that. It doesn't mean that you're going to take all of that loan, all of the items that have been listed, number one. Number two is that, mind you, even if you get a loan from World Bank or IMF or all those kind of people, they usually don't release all the money at once. They always monitor the money. They release in bits. They monitor some more. They release in bits and so on. You know, so that is just the expenditure framework. It is not a new request to go and borrow, unfortunately, as has been presented to the public as if, oh, Tinubu wants to borrow the money. No, it's not going to happen. You know, so in fact, this year we're taking only 1.3 billion of fresh loan dollars. 1.3 billion dollars of fresh loan is the only thing we're taking this year.
All right, Mr. Olojede, let's get your reaction to that answer from him.
Well, a loan is still a loan, irrespective of what amount we're taking this year and what amount we'll be taking next year. So if a loan is 24 billion, but we're taking a little over 1 billion this year, if it is for over 2 years, then it means the rest are expected to be taken over the next 2 years. So the bottom line is the entire amount is meant to be taken over the designated period, and it will come with its effects, with its broadening effect on the finances of the nation. So now it's actually it's approved now anyway. So because there are certain things that will have happened to help us ensure value along that pathway. Number one is at the level of the executive in itself when it was preparing for what we're going to borrow. So certain thoroughness will have gone into it. The second level, of course, is the National Assembly. We should have asked all the right questions to be sure that everything is okay. So are we borrowing for the right purposes? Is there something we don't have to borrow for? Are the terms okay for us? What is the framework for monitoring all the projects that this money is going to be deployed to? And all of that were questions that should have been answered at the level of NASS. I don't know how much of that happened, but that should also be that second layer that will help us ensure that if we get this loan, they will be properly deployed and they will bring benefits to the people. Now it has been approved, so that second level is also now gone. third level is at the level of performance management, and that is where there is still hope. To say, look, for each amount dedicated to what project or what initiative of the government, what are the clear deliverables that we expect from those things? So if an amount is dedicated to power, I'm just using an example now, power can be measured. So within which period and what amount of megawatt or what improvement in infrastructure is expected to be delivered, they are measurable. So I'm going to dedicate $2 billion, and at the end of the 2 years, I expect that so megawatt of electricity will have been delivered to the final consumers. That is a measurable thing, and that is a performance management framework. You can take the same thing to road and say, okay, I'm dedicating this much to road infrastructure. So at the end of the period, I expect that this number of kilometers of roads and bridges in these regions of the nation will have been delivered. And then we can also measure. It goes on, even those ones that appear as if they cannot be measured, they can be measured. If you're saying, I'm going to do food for students in some part of the country, the reason why children were being fed in the school system was to increase enrollment. So it is measurable. To say when we started, this was the enrollment number. By this end of first year, the enrollment number has increased to this much. So what we need to now emphasize, having the approval has done it, is to be able to have a solid performance management framework that will ensure that these borrowings would deliver on clear benefit, clear measurable benefits for the people.
This IMF borrowing and repayment is still a conversation that's on the front burner. What do you have to say about this? Because when we had Dr. Faswa here, he said, yes, that the current administration has been able to pay off, which is a plus to the president. What's your take on paying off and then still going to borrow? And also, can you shed more light on what this would do to Nigeria's debt profile?
Okay, the loans are discrete loans. They are different loans, and their terms are also different. So some will run out this year, some other ones will run out next year. So that is how it works. So the loan that was paid off has run its own course. And unless it is rolled over or renewed, then if we need more money, we need to get that from either the same lender or other lender. So they are not exactly connected. The one that has been paid off is because it has, by virtue of the terms and conditions of that loan, it is meant to have been paid off, and we have paid it off. Loans are described as non-discretionary expenditure. That is to say, you don't really have an option. You must meet your obligation under those loans. So far, so good. We have done that. But the pressure will start to increase as the loan profile itself goes up. That is where the problem is. So as we are planning to borrow, we have a finance house in our group. And if somebody says, I should approve a credit, there are certain questions I will ask. And one of the critical questions is, how is this loan going to be repaid? So when I'm satisfied with the repayment plan, then I can say, it is okay to process this loan. The same thing applies even in public sector borrowing. So one of the issues is, how do you repay? If you remember the issue of debt to GDP and all the rest, one of the problems with debt to GDP is the fact that you don't pay debt from GDP, you pay it from revenue. So emphasis should be on the revenue. As we are growing the debt profile now, we must be ready to grow the revenue profile of the country, because debt repayment is done from revenue, not from GDP.
Okay.
So it will bring pressure. Yeah.
Yes, so you've said that debt repayment is from revenue and not from GDP. Do we have a structured plan, or is there a recommendation for a structured plan as to how this should be repaid? Are there structured steps that should be taken to ensure the repayment of this? Because from what you said, before you would grant any loan, you need to find out what the plan for repayment is.
I have not seen the details of the request, so I don't know what are the details that have been provided. But I want to assume that there will have been a repayment plan in which government will have, made a forecast of its own revenue and how it will grow it, and how those revenue increase will be able to pay off the loan obligations as and when due. Of course, some of these loans are meant to be deployed into segments of the economy where they will help to drive prosperity in those places. For example, anything you deploy into power. If today we double the volume of grid electricity that are made available to consumers, especially the industrial consumers, that would dovetail into better performance in the economy, and it will generate revenue for the government. If we deploy any portion that is also deployed into revenue generating projects, we also bring revenue for the government. So these are the kind of things that will have gone into the revenue plan to ensure that as those obligations are falling due, we are able to meet them. I've not seen those documents, but I just want to believe that even the National Assembly will have been interested in that, and they probably will have demanded for or raised certain questions in that direction and gotten the answers before those loans were approved.
And, I mean, you say you haven't seen the document, so we don't really know what the repayment terms are. And many times the government will argue that taking loans, I mean, it's not really a terrible thing within itself, but it's what is the loan used for, how can you account for the loan, and like you said, the repayment of the loan. Given the FX volatility rate, should we be worried about Nigeria's constant, maybe reliance on external loans?
Well, the external loan is a double-edged sword when it comes to FX. When it comes to FX, your concern is probably the fact that because the FX loan, the repayment will also be in FX, and which means some of the FX we earn will have to be deployed to loan repayments. The flip positive side is that the loans themselves, being FX, is an addition to the pool of FX supply within the country, which will help to stabilize our exchange rates. That is a positive side. It is a borrowing, all right, but it's an inflow. It comes in to swell the supply of FX within the system. So it will also help in stability. However, I think what I hear you speak to as far as what you said is still in that performance management side of things. I've seen a lender's report on one of the government loans many years ago. It was for a government enterprise. And that lender's report said that the project was a failure. So it is possible to borrow money, deploy the money, and the underlying project will still be a failure. Therefore, we must have a firm performance management framework that will ensure that this money, as they are deployed, will bring forth those benefits. Otherwise, we might also end up with cases like the one I referred to, in which money was fully deployed, but the underlying project was described as a failure. That is what you don't want to have when you have to go borrow money. Government revenue has been increasing. I hope we can gas down on that growth, both from oil and non-oil. If that happens, then we probably will be able to meet those obligations as I went. But then, we don't have the details yet. We're just hoping that, or trusting that the relevant decision makers are on top of this game.
Permit me to come down to, what I like to call street economics. The local people's economics, where everyone can really understand. Because, looking through some of the comments, some people will say all this grammar of fiscal policy, borrowing, lending is a bit hard for them. So we're going to shift that aside and then now attack this situation the best way possible. So I'm going to take the questions one by one. I would really like it if we can hit the nail on the head with the clarity of answers, and then we move on to the next. So one, the local man on the street is worried how much he is going to end up paying as the government is borrowing. In one of the reports I did see, they said each Nigerian is going to owe about 800 and something naira as the government continues to borrow. So who is going to pay this debt? Is it Mr. Ade on the street or his sons? So they are worried. How can we douse and help them understand that these borrowings, yes, would affect them, but in what way?
I would say they shouldn't panic, because debt has always been there. Public debt is not directly tied down to individual citizens. The individual citizens are not being asked to bring an amount to be deployed towards that repayment. As a matter of fact, when the debt is properly deployed, if properly deployed, it should improve the lot of the citizens. So the citizens should prosper more. When the citizen prospers more, he's able to pay his taxes. And it is that portion of the taxes that will go to repayment of this obligation as the fall due. So citizens should focus on having forums or platforms or channels through which they can continue to ask questions about the underlying deployment of these loans, either via through NGOs, and also NGOs are civil organizations, through the media houses like yourself, that we can continue to have an engagement to determine if the benefits that these loans are being put to are actually coming to manifestation. That should be the focus of the citizens. There will not be a direct request for them to bring certain money to come and repay. As a matter of fact, I am an advocate of the fact that Nigeria is not borrowing enough. But I say that with a clause. The reason we are not able to borrow enough is because our revenue profile is still very poor. We need to do more with revenue profile. It is when we do that we will be able to leverage what we have and get enough money to turn the turbines of this economy as it should be. If you look at I think the topmost economy in Africa now is South Africa. It used to be Nigeria in terms of size. But with South Africa, when you go and look at the revenue profile of South Africa, it's literally about 34 times of what Nigeria generates. So if a country of 60 million is able to make 4 times what we are making, and they say we are 200 million or more in this country, it should give us a concern about we should have a concern about revenue profile. Whatever we need to do to ramp up revenue profile is important. I want to believe that part of why we're taking this debt is to commit them to some of those levers that will help us to drive the revenue profile to the levels that it should be. Our revenue today is still poor, in spite of the fact that it has improved from where it used to be. It's still very low, very low. And that is why we should be careful about our borrowing appetite.
All right, my final question before I hand over to Olive. You also mentioned about performance, ensuring that it is measured. And some of the questions on the street is, how are we certain that the monies that are being borrowed are used for what the borrowing should cover? I'm sure you saw the street lights situation, and Nigerians are still saying, despite the 200 and something million per one street light, Nigeria and some parts are still dark. So how can Nigerians be sure that it would be used for that? And what do you think can be done?
I think we should demand for more information about these loans. What are they being deployed? And then via some structured institutions, we can monitor this. So if the loan detail says 2 billion is going to be deployed to electricity. Electricity for what? Transmission line, generation, blah, blah, blah. What will be the goal? The goal will be to deliver, to step up our production or the ultimate amount of energy that is made available to the consumer from 5,000 megawatts to 10,000 by 2027. That is a clear, measurable thing. And via those structured means, we can continue to demand for the progress, information in power. I just use power as an example. The same thing can be deployed for literally all the purposes for which the loans are to be deployed. So let's be able to demand for more. As it is right now, it appears like a dark hole. Of course, we know the total amount and all that stuff, but we need more information so that the citizens themselves can help the government and support the process to ensure that these loans will be properly deployed and will deliver the benefits they're supposed to deliver.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. We will be following up with this loan. Like you said, Nigeria is not borrowing enough, but let's hope that we're able to see that the gap between the collection of this loan and actual implementation isn't so far. We're seeing a closer gap. Thank you for your time this morning.